Okay, so here we're going to practice sketching a trigonometric graph from a description. And then after we have the graph, we'll use that graph to write the equation. So sketch the graph of a sine curve with a maximum of 20, minimum of 10, and period of 16. I want to focus on period of 16 first. So a sine curve starts at its midline, goes above to the maximum, back down to the midline, down to the minimum, and then finishes at the midline. So this is what we would call one full period of the graph. And if, in this case, the period is 16, that would mean that at x equals 16, the sine curve has finished one full cycle. So one of the things you might have tried to memorize is that period equals 2 pi over b. And in this question, they tell us the period is 16. So we can say 16 equals 2 pi over b. I'm going to leave that alone for right now, but when we get to writing the equation, we're going to come back to that. Okay, cool. So now some stuff that is easier. We know the shape of the sine curve, and we know that this will have a period of 16, reaching a maximum of 20. So I'm going to put that kind of high on the graph. And then a minimum of 10. So about halfway between 0 and the 20 that I put is the 10. So now we can think about, well, halfway between the maximum and the minimum will be the midline. And you can see sine begins at the midline. It doesn't begin at the minimum or at the maximum. It begins in the middle. All right. Let's do that sine curve, starting at the midline and then up to the maximum, back down to the midline, down to the minimum, and then back to the midline. So that is right there. That's one full cycle, finishing at x equal 16. Cool. So one other thing that we need to label on our graph is what is the height, what is the y value of that midline? So we know the midline will be halfway between the minimum and the maximum. So we can add the maximum plus the minimum and divide by 2 to find the middle of them. This is the same as finding the midpoint in geometry. So 20 plus 10 is 30 over 2 is 15. So that means we have our midline at y equal 15. Now it should be pretty clear that the distance from the midline to the maximum is 5, and the distance from the midline down to the minimum is also 5, 5 above and 5 below. So now we can get into writing the correct equation with our amplitude of 5. Now, most students find putting the midline into the equation as the easiest part. So the midline is up 15 units from the y-axis. So this is plus 15 for our value of k. So we're going to have y equals 5 times the sine of b times x plus 15. So now our only step left is to figure out what b will be, and we can rewrite our equation finally. So here we had set up the period equals 2 pi over b. The period is 16, so 16 equals 2 pi over b. We can write this as 16 over 1 if you like, so we can then cross multiply. Be careful here. This is going to look kind of weird because it's going to be 16 times b. make sure you understand that 16 is the constant, and then multiplied by b, which we're trying to find, the unknown, equals 2 pi times 1, which is 2 pi. So now we want to isolate b. Right there we have 16 times b, so we're going to divide both sides by 16. And we get b equals 2 pi over 16, which is the same as pi over 8. So that's the number that we're going to put right there in front of x, pi over 8. So now we'll finish up with y equals amplitude of 5 times the sine of pi over 8 multiplied by, sorry, that's an 8, multiplied by x, and then plus 15 to go up to a midline of y equal 15.